Pumpkin Spice Latte, P.S.L. Call it what you want, but I know the people love it. Every fall, people flock to grab the drink that marks the start of the season. Today, we'll be showing you how to make the perfect pumpkin spice latte, all the way down to the individual spices that go into it. But as usual, there's gonna be a twist, because we've somehow gotten our hands on a 200-pound pumpkin. Like that. It may be really hard for you to tell the scale right now, but let me just try to fit my arms around this thing. As you can see, I have a pretty large wingspan, and the fact that I can't fit my arms around this thing should be really telling. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, we are going to carve into this pumpkin and make a 250-pound pumpkin spice latte. All that liquid is gonna add some extra weight to this thing. But in that process, I'm also gonna show you how to make the perfect pumpkin spice latte. We're gonna blend all the spices ourselves and really get down to the nitty-gritty of what makes the perfect P.S.L. But first, let's head to Starbucks for some market research. So here's the thing, I'm gonna go to Starbucks right now with no bias. And to be honest with you, I haven't had the pumpkin spice latte yet this season. In fact, I often don't get it because I like to make it myself at home. I'll be totally honest, it tastes like it's packed with chemicals. We've been waiting here at Starbucks for 10 minutes now. There's a huge line. Everyone's getting the pumpkin spice lattes.
Hi there, welcome to Walking Starbucks.
How are ya? Could we please do 2 pumpkin spice lattes? Tall, please. How are ya? He's never had a pumpkin spice latte. Thank you so much. He said, have a splendid day. Extra points today for Starbucks for their employees being extremely, extremely nice. Question is, does the pumpkin spice latte live up to the hype? First impressions, other than the fact that this is piping hot, which is good. I don't taste that much pumpkin and I don't taste that much spice. I'll go so far as to say that I don't taste any pumpkin and I taste only the slightest hint of spice. And the spices are not correct at all. Starbucks, I'm gonna be honest. I love the idea of this, I really do. But I think at this point you may have gotten slightly too confident by the fact that your pumpkin spice latte is so incredibly iconic. I think you need to go back to the drawing board. Maybe put some true pumpkin flavor in this thing. I've got a 200-pound pumpkin back at home, so I've got plenty to go around. Let's go show Starbucks how a true pumpkin spice is made. We're back with our pumpkin spice latte, and I'm now more excited than ever to show Starbucks how it's really done. In fact, after taking just a little drink, I looked inside my latte, and this was floating on the top. Evidently, that's the little bit of pumpkin that's in there trying to escape the rest of the drink. We need to do better. It's time to make the 250-pound pumpkin spice latte. To begin, we can't use any regular old pumpkin carving spoon. That's just not gonna cut it. No, we need some power. I'm about 6'3", and this pumpkin is so tall, I'm gonna need a step ladder to get any leverage at all. Please excuse me for this slightly awkward angle. Now, without further ado, let's let the carving begin. Our pumpkin lid is finally pretty loose, and I have one more little bit to go. And then it's finally time to wedge out that top. It's huge. And can I just say that, not surprisingly, this is the thickest pumpkin top I have ever seen. I mean, this thing's easily a foot tall. Now at this point, it's all about digging out those guts. They all seem to be super light and almost kind of fluffy. Smells terrible. But we're gonna keep digging in and make a giant pile on the table next to us. After all, we need this whole thing hollowed out to be able to make our pumpkin spice latte inside it. In addition to the biggest pumpkin I've ever seen, these seeds are also massive. Now that we've cleared out a whole pumpkin, it's got a really loud echo. Now here on this cutting board, we have the 5 spices that go into a perfect pumpkin spice latte. We've got cinnamon, allspice berries, nutmeg, cloves, and ginger. Now to make our homemade pumpkin spice blend, we're gonna go in with a handful of cinnamon sticks, a few bits of nutmeg, which we have to use a microplane for, given they're a little bit too tough. If you haven't seen shaved nutmeg before, the inside looks like a truffle. Then a handful of freeze-dried ginger, a few cloves, trust me, a little goes a long way, a few allspice berries, and lastly, some OSMO pumpkin spice salt, which will be available on October 28th. Now we pulse it all up. I'm telling you right now that this pumpkin spice seasoning right here will be unlike anything you've ever smelled before. Actually smelling something real like this that's just been ground down from its basic elements is unbelievable. It's one of those experiences with food that most people will never have, but that's so incredibly simple to do. At this point, we can't possibly get enough milk to fill this entire pumpkin. So instead we'll be using water and milk powder. But first, it's gonna take a lot of water. Now at this point, we need to heat our water up, so I'm gonna use a sous vide system to get this to the perfect temperature for the pumpkin spice latte. 200 degrees Fahrenheit on the dot. Now after all that prep, it's finally time to assemble. We'll start by adding in a giant bowl of milk powder. Milk powder and water make milk, the base to any good pumpkin spice latte. And you can always feel free to use substitutes. Next, we'll go in with a nice big stream of white sugar, then a big heap of pumpkin puree, fresh from our big old pumpkin. Then we'll add in a big handful of brown sugar, then a generous amount of our beautiful fresh pumpkin spice. Of course, the most important ingredient in this whole thing. Then a bunch of freshly made steaming hot coffee. And then it's time to whisk it up. Why did you give me a mini whisk? It really doesn't get better than whipped cream on a good P.S.L. Just layer that baby up until you have heaps and heaps of it. Here's my theory in life. You can never have enough whipped cream.
Got a little problem.
It appears our pumpkin is cracking under the weight of all this, and it makes sense. That's why you should never try to make a 250-pound pumpkin spice latte. We'll finish the thing off with a bunch of pumpkin spice, and our pumpkin spice latte is complete. To finish things off, we have to try this. After all, the only thing worse than making a bad pumpkin spice latte is making a 250-pound bad pumpkin spice latte. I'll go right in with my ladle and grab as much as I can. It turns out the amount of whipped cream on top is so thick that we actually can't scoop in to get any of the pumpkin spice latte. This might be the worst idea we've ever had, but instead we're gonna try to tap it. Oh, it worked. Plan B, the pumpkin tap was a terrible idea. This looks so bad. The tap wasn't the best idea in the world, but it's good enough that we can easily just fill up our little mini pumpkin cup. Ultimately, I think our 250-pound pumpkin spice latte was a success, especially now that I have it in a much more manageable, tiny little mini pumpkin cup. But the real final test is the taste test. Here's my final takeaway. I'd like for it to be a little bit more rich and creamy. Perhaps that meant just adding a little bit more heavy cream into the actual base mixture. Given that this pumpkin spice latte is in a massive, massive pumpkin, I'm really happy with how it turned out. In fact, I wouldn't be all that surprised if we see a few fairs next year having pumpkin spice lattes served out of their giant pumpkin. Don't forget to toss a like on the video and subscribe, and I'll see you for our next crazy creation. I don't want to say it, but this is starting to look a little weird.
It's actually pretty good. Just you in there.
You want to try it or no? Really? Yeah.